as we did last week, we've introduced this new segment called the Rogues Writers Room. Okay, and I'm going to kind of set the stage, and we really want some input from the Rogues Gallery. Whether you saw the episode or not, you can go by our description of the episode and give suggestions and all that kind of stuff, whatever characters you want to some extent, because I'm going to play the studio. And so I have to give you a few rules. Dave is going to be our showrunner, so he's going to be the ultimate, arbitrator. He's going to be the ultimate yes or no on any ideas we come up with, including my own, because I'm giving him full creative reign, except for this. Obviously, the other episodes we have to deal with. They've already been shot. We can't change anything that happened in the previous episode. So we can't just run with what we did from last week. We've got to start from scratch because all the other episodes are shot. Up to episode 8, they're all shot. We've got to fix episode 9. They've shown us the script that they have. We're telling you we want changes. We don't think this is going to work. We want some changes here. So you can't just copy the script. But we've got to get to Soji's home planet. We already cast Brent Spiner to come back, so we got to use him. We've got to resolve, obviously, what happened with 7. We've got to get everybody back together again. So those are basically your limitations there and the things that you have to do, you have to work with. We've got to get to Soji's planet, and we've got to use Brent. We've got to use him in some way. We've got to use him in this episode because we've already signed the contract, and he's supposed to be showing up in this episode. So by hook or by crook, we got to wedge him in here somewhere. So with that, those are really, I think, the only limitations from the studio. We can basically start from wherever you want, Dave. How do we fix this? We know how the previous episode ended. They were going to Soji's planet. So what's the first thing that happens? Do they arrive at Soji's planet? Is there a detour? Where do we go from there?
Well, I am open to suggestions from the writers' room. Those of you that are Rogues Gallery, you are essentially the writers' room. So if you have suggestions, please chime in. I'm going to give my initial idea for a fix. That's not easy to do. Well, we're headed towards Soji's planet, so we're going to get to Soji's planet. That's the easy thing. We're already headed there from the last episode. We just got to pull up into orbit. I don't think that we need the whole flowers attacking the ships idea. I don't
thought
see
you
what
liked
the point
that.
of that is.
I thought you liked the flowers.
No, I like the concept as executed in previous examples of science fiction. And if
I'll
they
tell you what the studio would say.
Through,
I'll tell you what a wise studio would say. The wise studio would say, we need them to be greeted by something that I can make as a toy that's compelling and people are going to want. Because nobody's going to want these flowers. That's what the studio would be saying. That's why one of the reasons we fired Shaban was we don't want these damn flowers. Okay? I can't sell that. Nobody's going to want that toy. Nobody's going to want that model. Give me something that's going to actually be like compelling and cool and people are going to want to collect and play with and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what the studio, should have been saying. So it's like, right. Are they greeted? When they come up to the planet, is there some sort of greeting party? Do these people have ships? That's a thing right off the bat. Do they have ships? Do they have a fleet of ships? Do they have one ship?
That's the hard part. I dislike this episode so much. It's hard to say. In all honesty, I think they should just pull up into orbit. They get a hailing signal. They answer the hailing signal, and they're welcomed down to the planet. And then down on the planet, we have of course, the synthetic race that's there. I I would change things up a little bit in the context that the other synths do not have quite the same abilities that Soji has. So that we learn that Soji and Daj are in some ways unique. And that they basically needed a mission, that just like they said in the episode, Soji had to have been sent out for a reason. Maddox needed her to go out for a reason. So in my mind, the reason is she was sent there to download some information from the Borg database, and they're hoping that they can use some of this data that they have, and this information, in order to find a way to enhance the positronic brains of the other synthetic beings on the planet, so that they can attain the same level of more human interaction that Daj and Soji are capable of. So basically, they come back with this information that Soji was gathering in the hopes that this information they can use to kind of upgrade the rest of the members of the society, so that they can actually hopefully blend in more with humanity and not stand out because they're afraid about being executed because of the synthetic
because of what happened before. That does make some sense. So the idea is essentially that the whole mission of Daj and Soji was to learn how to interact with humans better, because the first contact was a disaster. And maybe they actually blame themselves because it went so bad and everything like that. And that they want to figure things out better. I don't think that's bad. I think that's a much better explanation than they had in the show, because there really wasn't one.
Right.
We also have an idea here from Mayuko. The Kaylon had their heads turned into weapons. If you remember, the Kaylons, their heads actually turned into weapons. So that could be an alternative to flowers. The synths turn into missiles. So the synths themselves can actually sort of like morph or change form or whatever. And they can actually turn into weapons, to bombs or something like that. So there's an idea there, as far as some way that they can defend themselves. Because we also remember the Romulans are coming. We've established that in the previous episode. The Romulans are coming. The whole purpose of them going to the synth home world is to warn them that the Romulans are on their way. So that also presents an idea of how are they supposed to defend themselves.
I've got that. Let me get there. I've got an idea. So within this group, right? What I want to do is I want to look at this more from the standpoint of Blade Runner, instead of necessarily what they did with the Kaylon, just because I don't want to necessarily rip off Orville. Orville did such a good job with that idea. Like you do need to move in a different direction. So I want to look at it more in the concept of Blade Runner, and the idea that they're trying to find a way to integrate better in order to have more life. Okay. And so it's going to come out. It's like, well, the Romulans are right behind us. And there could be obviously concern. And then one of them could say, okay, well, we need to signal to our ship. And it turns out maybe they do have one ship. We'll have to signal our ship, and then hopefully they'll get here in time that we can get on board the ship and we can get off the planet. Because Picard's ship can't fit all the synthetic beings that are on the planet. So it's kind of like the ticking the ticking clock idea, the ticking bomb. Maybe that's what drives the episode. Is can we get everyone together?
You know what they all could fit on? We haven't established what happened here yet. Is they could all fit on the Borg cube. That would be the obvious way to go. They can all fit on the Borg cube quite easily, especially with most of the Borg being dead anyway.
Well,
I don't know. I sometimes I think the most obvious thing is the easiest solution. We have this big ass Borg cube. We're in control of it in terms of our heroes are in control of it. Seven is in control of it. And I even remember during the episode, there was that moment where we see the Borg cube And of course, there's like a second of apprehension with the with the Motley crew, with Picard's crew, because they don't know exactly what's going on, because they're like, oh, that's supposed to be broken, isn't it? And I thought they were really going to do something with it, and instead, what happens is they crash it. The flowers attack it, and they crash the ship. So to me, the obvious solution is, let's just keep the damn cube, and let's use that as our negotiating tool to rescue the synths. Instead of Picard trying to say that he's going to fit everybody on Rios' ship, which I was like, does that even make any sense? Because he even says that. He says, I have a ship. I can take you all on Rios. It's like, how big is Rios' ship exactly? I mean, we've only seen like a couple rooms. As far as I can tell, that ship is pretty damn small, you know? So got this big giant Borg cube. Why don't we use that?
Well, I had actually an idea for the Borg cube. We just haven't quite got there yet. So they signal for their ship, okay, and it is off doing some reconnaissance stuff, and they signal for it. Soji's returned. We have the information. We need to get off the planet before the Romulans show up. So their ship shows up, and then the big reveal is going to be that Brent Spiner is on the ship. The question we have to ask ourselves, though, and Peggy, I did see your post there. The question we have to ask ourselves is, who is Brent Spiner actually playing? Because I feel like at this point, to have him play Data just doesn't work. I mean, I would like for him to, but it doesn't make sense why he wouldn't have reached out to Picard. We need some additional drama. So I'm going to go back to Eric's idea. It looks like it's Data on the ship. It turns out it's really Lore. Laura is immediately like, why did you bring him here? You're only supposed to bring the information. We don't need the Federation involved in this. You know what I mean? Like, it turns into this whole thing. So we still have a similar conflict, like, which currently exists in the episode, but instead of hiding that potentially, like, Soong is a threat, it just turns out that, you know what I mean, that it is Lore. And so they have this whole thing where there's the conflict. They're trying to get him on the ship. Lore doesn't trust Picard, right? And he's very dubious of this motley crew. He's not sure about any of this. Of course, Picard doesn't trust Lore. Picard is questioning, Lore's motivations in all of this. How did he team up with Maddox? We don't get this answer in this episode because we knew that for the next episode. And in the midst of all this insanity, the Romulans show up. So, of course, the Romulans show up. They start attacking the synth ship. We have a crazy epic space battle going on. And it looks like the synths are not going to make it. And then that's when the Borg cube would actually show up with Seven and Elnor on board. And then they use the Borg technology. They use the Borg cube actually against the Romulans. So then we have sort of that standoff kind of moment. So we can leave the episode as a cliffhanger when the Borg show up. Laura immediately is like going, the Borg, why are the Borg here? Picard knows that they're an ally. Of course, the Romulans know that they're a threat. So that would be that's my whole thing for this particular episode. That's all I got, unless the writer's room has got something else to contribute. I think that's what I got.
Well, I want to be clear with my Lore idea. It goes a little bit deeper than that. I would have Lore as the mastermind behind all of this. And I think it would be cool if we had Lore that as we're sort of getting all these elements together, and Seven is quote unquote in charge of the Borg cube, that Lore just kind of flips a switch type of thing and just takes the ship over. Like he's been manipulating all this from day one. He is the absolute mastermind of this entire plan. Because it can go exactly in the same direction they're going on the show. That Lore knows what the message is, and he's just trying to get to the point where he can actually convince the synths to go ahead and destroy all the organics. because that's kind of what Lore's plan was from the beginning when he actually integrated with the Borg, was that he was going to go ahead and try to make fully synthetic life. In fact, that's what the Borg, that was the selling point. That was his pitch to them, was that I can make you fully synthetic like me. And then if they want to be fully synthetic, then it actually fits into this idea of this galactic federation or multi-galactic federation of synths. Well, they can fit in. They don't have to be destroyed or annihilated. You could even make it that the Borg themselves, all this time, they let the cube be taken and stuff like that because they kind of knew it was going to happen. And it was all just an elaborate plan to get contact with these other synths so that the Borg themselves can become fully synthetic. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the thing. I just want to be clear with what my thinking of Lore is, that he was the actual mastermind the entire time. He's been he set into motion all of these things, kind of knowing how people would react and what they would do. You know what I mean? To get this at the end that he wants. So we do have some comments in the chat here. Joss wants to see a TARDIS. He would like to see a TARDIS involved.
All right.
And also a descendant of Harry Mudd.
Sure, why not?
Peggy says, I could see it not being Data, but do we really know how many siblings he could have? I mean, Dr. Noonan's Sung. Siblings is interesting. I could deal with Dr. Sung's brother or sister, for that matter, much easier than I can deal with his unknown son that nobody ever talked about. That I thought was cheesy. I could actually deal with a sibling a lot easier. I could buy Brent Spiner coming back as Sung's brother, or even twin brother. You know what I mean? Because
right,
it's not the same. Like, they could be estranged, all that kind of stuff. It's like it's not the same as when you have a son. And obviously, you know, the implication was with the original Sung was he Lore and Data were his sons, because, you know, you kind of feel like because he couldn't have one. You know what I mean? Like because he never did. So instead, he went ahead and made these androids that are he regards as his sons. They call him father. You know what I mean? So I could see a sibling actually a lot easier and a lot better than I can see what they actually did in the series. And then Peggy also says we could just give him a brand new character, give Spiner just a brand new character that's not related at all. And then Yuko mentions that the Borg Queen told Data in First Contact that androids are inferior because they were built by inferiors. Picard could have had synths versus Borg and put that theory to the test. Role of the Borg is confusing. It is confusing. There's no doubt it is confusing. Yeah, I do remember that line, but also if you remember in that whole thing with First Contact, the Borg Queen decides that she wants Data, that she doesn't want Picard anymore, that she doesn't want Locutus. She actually decides she wants Data. The Data is essentially going to be the Borg King. So that kind of further amplifies Lore's original vision, which was a merger of the Borg with the synths. And I guess that's ultimately what I would like to have seen, or I would like to see, and that's what I would pitch, is like we need to kind of get the synths and the Borg together. We've had this cube. This cube is supposed to be relevant. We have control of the cube. Let's do something with it. You know what I mean? Instead of just crash it into the ground. And let's show that there is something to all this as far as the synths. Because again, it comes down to what you talked about earlier, Dave. What was Soji doing?
Yeah.
Why the hell was she there? If she is an agent of Lore, and if she is trying to get Lore's agenda, his original agenda going, as far as a merger of the Borg with the synths, with the Sung type androids, so that essentially the Borg can become Sung type androids. To me, that makes a lot of sense, even in the context of everything else that's gone on in the show and what a train wreck it is. I think that could work. That could work. I'm not, by the way, dismissing the idea of let's just have Brent do something else. You know what I mean? He doesn't necessarily have to be lore. Because you could still have, for instance, the other idea with this is that instead of the fragment coming from Data, the fragment came from lore. Then you don't have to have him be lore. It's just that all these synths actually are from lore. They're not from Data. So then Brent Spiner doesn't necessarily have to play either one of them. He could be a new character. He could be a sibling. You know what I mean? He could be something else, you know? I don't know. I think those are interesting ideas. So you're the showrunner,
Yeah,
Dave.
no, they
You
are.
have to make the decision. Here we go. I think you touched on this before, Dave. Katie says Picard will die and his mind will be transferred into a synth Picard. Seven will send Elnor back to Picard. Seven will be attacked by Zot, and she'll possibly be rescued by the Doctor, TNG guest. But I remember we talked off the air about your thought about the intro with the pieces and putting Picard back together, that possibly that's exactly what would happen in terms of Picard himself would be killed, but he would become a synth. He would still live on as a synth. Kind of what Sung's doing in the actual episode. Sung is trying to transfer his consciousness because it sounds like he may be dying as well. There's an implication there in the episode that he may be dying as well. That's not a bad. We could kill Picard and bring him back as a synth. That'd be pretty dramatic. We could kill Picard at the end of this. You know what I mean? And then with the idea that we're going to bring him back as a synth in the finale, and now he's a synth. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way to go. See, the problem is for me, if we want to do the whole idea of the android and the Borg into one being, a more perfect being, I like that idea. The issue with it for me personally, though, is the fact that I would have liked to have set that up earlier, right? And to me, it seems like it can still be done in 2 episodes, but it's an awful lot of ground to try to cover. I do like the idea that the synths could actually be the siblings of lore instead of Data. That's an interesting idea. But I in my mind, I think we should just have Brent Spiner play a more organic, version of lore. I do kind of like that idea. He could be behind everything, pulling the strings. It's an interesting idea. We do have some additional comments coming actually from the
Peggy makes interesting comments. Says, what I find interesting is the difference between the synths and the Borg is that the synths have no concept of a connection. They are each their own, whereas the Borg are aware of each other at all time. And I see what you're saying there. Like, we haven't seen any real evidence that the Sung style androids are networked, except we did see that with the uprising on Mars. They were hacked. So there is some evidence with I'll call it the new Trek version, the Picard version of the Sung style androids. They were hacked, and that's the reason that they were used to kill everybody on Mars. But as far as the civilization we see in the episode, I would agree with you. There's no evidence that they're networked to each other. Doesn't seem to be. In fact, there's evidence to the contrary because the Data Soji, if you will, she murders she either murders or allows one of the androids to be murdered by the Zot Vash agent, Soji's boyfriend. And nobody knows about it. Nobody knows what she did because she allowed that escape to happen for reasons that have not yet been explained. And so Peggy goes on by merging them, meaning merging the Borg and the synth. Do they become individualistic, or they become a huge hive that can be taken out by killing the queen? And that's an interesting question as well. I would say that that would not be the case simply because that's not what Lore did. If you remember, Lore's version of the Borg were very individualistic. That was, of course, the result of Hugh's contamination of that particular Borg cube. But I would argue that that if it was Lore, that he would just keep it the way that it was, and they would be individualistic and all that kind of stuff, and be like Lore. I mean, because Lore is very emotional and sadistic, and that kind of thing. So I don't think he would necessarily be into the hive mind thing, because that's just not his style. You know what I mean? That's just
Right.
that's me just talking off the top of my head. I think it's a really good observation, though, Peggy. I like that. I like the way you're thinking. You know what I mean? As far as there is a fundamental difference, it seems, between the way the synths act and the way that the Borg act, and how does that mesh? But I'm using the precedent of the TNG episodes of what actually happened, and the way that Lore's Borg was very individualistic. They were not a collective in the sense of the normal Borg.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Like I said, for me, I really like the idea of taking the Borg and the synths, and somehow in this show, the idea of bringing them together. Again, my only fear is I would have much rather set it up in a previous episode, so by the time that we get here, we kind of know where we are and what we're trying to accomplish. So I don't know. I just don't know.
We had a comment here that Ayuka said, "I love all the ladies taking over this chat," and yes, we're all for that, by the way.
But for sure.
Dave's wife came in and said, "Hey, ladies, this is my husband in the luchador mask. Hands off. He's all mine."
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, Eric. I don't have a lot of really great ideas for the writer's room for this episode. I just want to throw this script out and start over. My other suggestion would be that
it's hard. Well, it obviously gets harder the farther you go into the show, because you have more baggage you have to deal with, and you can't, it becomes harder to fix. But I think we have some good ideas going on in here.
No, there's a lot of.
Peggy came in late, and she's kind of gone the way that a lot of us have said, which is like, just go straight Orville. She said,
yeah, exactly.
Would the result then be Isaac's race on the Orville? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, to me, in a way, I'm like, they're ripping off Orville and they're ripping off Battlestar Galactica anyway. Why don't we do the same thing? Just make it better and make it more fun. You know what I mean? Like I keep saying, let's do something with the cube. Let's just not destroy it. You know what I mean? Let's do something with it. To me, that's like the first thing. That's like the most. It's like, why do they do that? Like, why just destroy the cube? You know what I mean? Like it's. Now, I could see maybe it'll fix itself and it'll be back in play, but it's like, so why go through this in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, what was the point of that? They do some really weird things in this show, and I just would not go in that direction. I just would not go there. The Borg cube is a very obvious solution to both evacuating the planet and also defending them. Borg cubes can wipe out fleets of other races' ships. You know what I mean? Like, that's been established. The Battle of Wolf 2309 or whatever, 43. I can't remember what the numbers were, but the battle from the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? That Borg ship is deadly. At the very least, it could evacuate the synths pretty easily. Now
another. I think one of the big possible. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, what I'm about to say is silly. I was just going to say that I saw one of the suggestions in the chat, and I was just going to say, well, another way to look at this too would be, it's a darkened room, right? Like the space battle's going on. It's a darkened room, and all of a sudden, this elderly gentleman wakes up and goes like that, and his wife turns over and looks at him, and it's Bob Newhart, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this. I just had this horrible dream."
Well, that's kind of where Ayuko was going. She said you can fix it by making this all Picard's nightmare, and he wakes up. We start fresh. Which, by the way, there is a fan theory too along these lines that the entire show is a delusion in Picard's demented mind because he's experiencing the dementia. And you know what? That I think is as good a solution as any. You know what I mean? Is to say, especially when you come to the point, you're like, how do we fix this? It's like if it is just all delusion, we can kind of go the Joker route, and you don't really know what's real and what's not. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be full on Newhart. It doesn't have to be full on Newhart. It could be a situation where
full on Newhart.
Full on Newhart. Just
yeah. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Have his wife there in the bed and everything.
Yep.
And
yep. We just pay for the rights for that sequence at the end, and then we show the first episode of the new Newhart show where they're running the bed and breakfast in Maine. Because why not?
Oh, here's another one along those lines. I kind of like Peggy's better. He says, so she starts out, or if you want to go crazy with being Picard's memory, then we could just go that it's all a big nightmare of, I think her idea is better than yours, Dave, Marvel's Xavier. So it's his nightmare. So we go straight up X-Men on this. It's all just a delusion in Professor Xavier's mind, you know? I think that's as good a solution as any. You know what I mean? I like it better than Newhart. I like it better than Newhart. There's more of a connection too, because of course Patrick Stewart did play Professor Xavier in the X-Men. So, it still has the spirit of your Newhart ending, Dave. It still has the spirit of your Newhart ending.
Now here's another way to go. If we want to go something a little bit more contemporary, we could actually have it be Patton Oswalt who wakes up in bed, and then his partner turns over and looks at him, and it's like, was it that dream again? It's like, no, this one was worse. There were no Jedi. There were no X-wings. I don't know what that dream was all about. I don't know. I don't understand what that nightmare was about. Alluding back to his Parks and Rec, where he tried to fix everything by tying everything into one universe. So,
and unfortunately, I've never seen Parks and Rec, so that reference went way
go.
over my head because I've never seen Parks and Rec. I'm sorry. I'm sure there's people in the chat that have. I do get a Yuko's a reference, which is I was thinking more of the shower scene in Dallas and Who Shot JR. I do know that reference. I think that's a classic. That's always a good way to go. You know, Picard's in the shower and it's Beverly, you know what I mean? And she's like, hey, what are you doing? You know?
I feel like we need that meme of Chris Evans, Captain America, because you just said, I get that reference. I feel like we should have put that meme up when you said
I get that reference. I actually got that reference. And I get that reference there too. Because I like the Marvel movies. Just not a Parks and Rec guy. Sorry. It's just not my thing. So yeah, we got some love for that Bob Ewing shower scene. Josh seems to dig that as well.
Well, I think we're all in agreement that there's just no simple way to fix this particular episode of Picard.
It's all a bad dream. That's the theme I'm getting from the Rogues Gallery right now. Is that it's just all a bad dream. Whether it's Charles Xavier or whether we're going full on Dallas or whatever. This is all just a bad dream, and we need to wake up.
Now we could go back to the Q idea, and we could do this whole thing, and it is Picard, and he wakes up in this bed like it's a bad nightmare, and he's kind of really whatever, and then his partner turns over and it's actually Q.
Right. That's
he's in the bed
very
with
much
him,
like Tapestry, yeah.
And it is
very much like that scene in Tapestry.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, did you have a bad dream, darling? You know, and then he could do the whole thing. It's like, well, let me fix that for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
That's another way to go. It's definitely
Yeah.
another way to go. I think a lot of those, though, of course, would be better for the finale. I will say that that would be kind of good to be like in the last episode, so we know it all was just a horrible dream. You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to get the finale done, and for our next episode, we're gonna do a huge thing. We're gonna just rewrite this whole friggin' thing from top to bottom. We're gonna throw this whole thing out, and we're gonna take a lot of the similar elements. You know, of course, taking directives from the studio, which of course is the role that Eric is fulfilling, and we're gonna create a totally new Star Trek Picard show. And I think that's going to be a heck of a lot more entertaining.
But we are getting more love. We are getting more love for the Dallas ending. Katie also says, my mother and I have joked that this will be the Dallas Bobby finale. It's a dream. We can only hope, Katie. I mean, that's a hope I think every classic Star Trek fan has, that this really is a bad dream, because it feels like a bad dream.
Yeah.
But Ayuko also says, oh, I do like the Q angle. It's another trial. That's actually good within Trek. You know what I mean? Like, if it's all been like some delusion, you know, that some Q inspired trial, because remember, the humanity's been on trial, right? This is the third time that he's putting humanity on trial, because Q said in All Good Things that, you know, basically the jury is still out on you guys. Jury is still out on you guys. And this whole contrived situation being a manipulation by Q to sort of test Picard's mettle, because he always seems to choose Picard as sort of the representative of humanity. I could actually seriously dig that, with all joking aside, that it was just all a trial by Q. I actually like that idea. And Katie says, FYI, Star Trek.com released an interview with John Delancey, and he said, I play Q. Are you saying that he's going to play Q, Katie? Is that what you heard? That he actually is going to be on the show and play Q? That was in regards to him being on the show and actually coming back as Q. There's been speculation of that Q would make an appearance in Picard. We only have one episode left. I don't know if you're referring specifically to him, you know, being on the show, or a report of him being on the show, or him responding to that or not. Because I haven't heard anything. I've heard rumors. I've heard rumors that Q would appear, but that's seemed less and less likely as the show has gone on. That would be funny if after all these debates and everything like that, like the last episode is just Q being like, "All right, this is all just a big farce or whatever." And, you know,
I mean, it's his. Oh, I play Q instead of I played Q. Oh. Well, here's the thing.
Oh, okay. In current tense. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of past tense.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, but at the same point too, I mean, you tell me, Eric. I mean, I don't feel like Q fits in this universe that they've constructed. I mean, it would really feel like it's coming out. I mean, you might as well have, what's his name from the original series show up, the other quasi omnipotent being. I mean, it doesn't. I don't see it fitting in the universe that they've created. They've tried so hard to stay away from any of those sort of classic next gen ideas. I can't see Q fitting in this episode.
I will say a lot of what they're doing feels like magic, so I think Q fits in perfectly in that regard, because I feel like a lot of what they're doing doesn't make any sense. The flowers in space, you know, that's just one example. I don't think there's any basis of like I said, they even said when they talked about Akiva said it on the Ready Room, in the teaser for the Ready Room, where, you know, the producers try to explain everything, which, by the way, if the producers had to explain everything because it's not explained within the narrative of the actual episode, that tells you their writing sucks. Okay, that's a red flag right there. And what Akiva said was that, you know, all the synths are based on that neuron from data, and he described the process and said, yeah, that process is just totally made up. We just made up that whole idea. There's no basis for it. He admits it. It's stupid. You know what I mean? But that's the base. That's the whole basis of the show. You know what I mean? Is that they're cloned from this neuron thing. You know, you can't clone androids. You know what I mean? Everybody kind of knows that, but it's like, yeah, we don't really care. You know what I mean? It's just it's their little contrivance. You know what I mean? To make the story.
Yeah.
So, but Katie points out it doesn't matter at this point who appears. It's not canon because Shaban is the canon toolbox. You know, he does not care about canon. I think that's very clear. Josh says Guinan sees alternate timelines, so maybe that will be the hook next season. This is all that can also go along with the bad dream scenario, is that she can see alternate timelines and say, that's your possible future, Picard, if we don't make this show better. If we don't make this show better, that could be your reality, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Whoopi will save this. I don't know. So, yes, she can see alternate timelines. That's true. And she could say, yeah, Picard, you know, if you don't change your ways, if you don't do something, this is what's going to happen. You know, so
what a shame she's not going to be in the last episode, because I'm probably done. Unless they come up with something terribly interesting, I'm done.
Well, so. I think the gallery, the Rogues Gallery, definitely likes the idea of this all being a bad dream.
No, yeah. Sure.
So what say you, showrunner? Is this all a bad dream? Is that the route we're going to go?
Sure, it's all a bad dream. I'm good with that. Why not? I'm sure some people are thinking they're having a bad trip or a bad dream right now. No, yeah, seriously, yeah, I could be down for the whole bad dream idea. So
I'm curious. I am curious as far as like. What do you think is going to happen in the last episode? Do you have any predictions for what they're going to do?
Do I have any predictions for what I think they're going to do in the last episode? I honestly have no idea. I really, when I watched the teaser, I mean, I think that I don't remember who it was who said it in the chat, but the idea that Soji is an organic and a synthetic as one, I do think it's going to come to a point where she's going to have to make a choice. I think that's pretty obvious. You know, only she can blah blah blah, right? Like, so we're gonna be at that apex where she's going to have to make a choice. I do honestly think there is some. In my mind, anyway, I do think there is some possibility that Picard is going to wind up in that android that Sung is intending to be for himself. I do think there's a good chance of that, because I feel like the intro is kind of suggesting that anyway. But beyond that, I honestly I don't know. I don't really have. I mean, for example, like I was going to try and rewatch this episode again for tonight's discussion, and I just didn't do it. I didn't want to watch it again. I didn't even make it through the Ready Room. Like, I watched the whole episode. I was watching the Ready Room, and I got to a certain point where I was like, I got stuff to do. Click. You know, like I
never got to bring that up in the Ready Room. So the actress who plays Soji and Daj, she was the subject of the Ready Room. And she was talking about basically what I call headcanon, which is something that actors will do because they have gaps in the story. And so they'll come up with their own backstory to help them to create the character. Okay. All actors do this because a lot of times the writers don't give them all the answers. So they have to kind of fill in the gaps. And of course she plays the Soji Data. the Data version of Soji. Again, I don't know the name. I don't want to know the name. I don't want to invest that much time and effort into it. But she's a very different character from Soji, obviously. And in a lot of ways, she's very menacing. And of course, what the actress said was that her motivation is that her sister was killed. That was the mission with Rios as captain. And that's kind of what's kind of distorted her a little bit. And, because her she has these feelings because her sister was murdered. Problem with that is, what does she do? She murders one of the other Synth's sisters. So that makes no sense as far as that's her motivation. Unless she's just insane. Then she's just insane again, because she's basically doing to her own people what was done to her and what is making her so against the humans and the organics, but she's going to do the exact same to her own people.
It doesn't make. I don't understand it.
It just shows you, like, even her trying to make sense of this doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Her trying to make the character make sense still doesn't make any sense. I just wanted to point that out because I forgot to point that out during the review portion. And Ayuko makes a good point. Said it's weird that canon is not observed because there are very detailed another aspect, like the Riker's daughter is Kestra, like Troy's deceased sister, and those are little Easter eggs. That's what they are. Easter eggs and fan service. That's what that is. Those are Easter eggs and fan service, and they're littered. Like I talked about the Tranya line, where they talk about Tranya. Unless you're basically a hardcore TOS fan of original series fan, you have no idea what Tranya is. The Tranya comes from one episode. That's Clint Howard's character when he was a little boy. He played an alien, and he's drinking Tranya. Because he offers him Tranya. The only time they ever reference it in Star Trek. It's a total just fan service Easter egg thing. Has no context to the scene. Doesn't help with the scene. It's not like they show people from that race. It's not like Clint Howard is in the scene, which, Clint Howard has played multiple roles on Star Trek. That would have been cool. You know what I mean? I would have liked that. But no, they do litter it with these stupid things. So superficial fans can say, oh, I remember that. That's so cool. You know what I mean? That's what they do, because that's what people do. They'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. This is real Trek, And I feel like that's why they do stuff like that, where they put those little Easter eggs in, that little fan service, so people can kind of nerd out and go like, oh, I remember that, even though it doesn't have any relevance to the scene or anything. Now, I'll grant you the thing with Troy's daughter does have more relevance, because that is, Troy's daughter, and we know about her sister that was, killed and all that kind of stuff, that died. But still, I just feel like so much of that stuff that they put in there is just meant to kind of give fans that very superficial moment of like, ooh, I remember that, without any real context or without any, because, the bottom line is, I think most of the people in the gallery also agree, is that this just doesn't have the spirit of Trek. Spirit of Trek is not in this show. And Picard is just a dittering old fool. You know what I mean? That speech thing was so sad. It's like he gives the speech and they just knock him down immediately. Like they don't even consider it. There's not even a debate or anything. They just kind of look at him. And Sung says, well, you're a threat. You're going to confuse people. They didn't seem confused to me. Nobody stood up for him. Soji didn't stand up for him. Nobody stood up for him. He's just a dithering old fool, with these crazy notions. And Katie points out, one of the few Trek moments, it says the writers didn't know how to do the Picard-Hugh reunion. Jonathan Del Arco came up with the infamous Hugh hug. And he said that. He said that on his Twitter that they didn't have that in the script. He came up with that because they were like, well, you guys, him and Patrick Stewart said, well, we should greet each other some way. And so Jonathan Del Arco was like, well, I'll hug you. It's like one of the only Trek moments in the entire thing. And it's like he just ad-libbed it. And that just says so much about the show.
That moment for me is one of the high points of this show. That episode with Hugh was so good. That's the only episode in my mind that comes as close as the first episode where we get the flashbacks to Data. Like those 2 episodes to me, I felt like those are the high points. Those feel the most like Trek. Those feel most like the ones that are connected to things that have come before. That is in some ways a continuation. It doesn't have to be a literal continuation, but you know what I mean? Those are the ones that feel like Trek, and it feels like we are moving, Picard's story forward. The rest of this stuff just feels like a weird bit of this and a weird bit of that, and here we are. Like I don't know. This show's just been really disappointing. It's just been really disappointing.
Katie seems to be in your Pike camp because she says the Star Trek spirit is alive. It's called Christopher Pike and #1 in Disco.
That's right.
And I know there are a lot of people that are pushing for the Anson Mount Pike show. There's a lot of people that want that. Rebecca Romaine, of course, would be #1 in that scenario. So I know there's a lot of people that want that. There's a lot of fans that want that. Why they haven't done that yet? I don't know.
It's the obvious thing to do. It's the thing all the fans want. And to be honest, too, like you were saying before, Eric, it's the one thing that there actually is something that came out of that they're actually selling. That new remodel of the Enterprise. They've made all kinds of things of that. I'm just waiting for the prices to drop a little bit before I purchase.
Because it looks like the original Enterprise.
But
it looks like the original Enterprise.
But wait, it's a great update too. It looks like the classic Enterprise and it's slightly updated, and it's just it's a much I like it so much better than the one that they did it in the J.J. Abrams. Like and the
Kelvin.
It's there's so much about what they did in that second season of Disco, specifically the Enterprise and with Pike and some of the other stuff. It's the closest thing they've come to that's like, okay, yeah, that's Trek. That's Trek, especially Pike. There's such a great scene because I gave you 3 episodes to watch. And there's that one episode with Pike, and he sees his future, and the way that Anson Mount handles that, and what he says in response to a future that he can leave behind, but he chooses to do the right thing. It's just, to me, that's what I want to see.
I will get around to it before I cancel my subscription. I will give you that pledge. I will get around. It's just so hard for me to watch Disco. I really do not like that show. I cannot. I have such a difficult time getting into it, And I've said it before. I don't like having yet another Spock. I don't have anything against the actor or anything. Actually, I saw him on stage at Star Trek Vegas, and I thought he gave a very good presentation. He seems like he's an actual fan, which, again, I always point out most of these actors are not. And we need to realize that. And that includes Patrick Stewart, because now Picard doesn't like science fiction. No, that's Patrick Stewart that doesn't like science fiction and has said it multiple times. That's not Picard.
Right.
But Katie says, I'm speaking as the number 7 of 9 Voyager fan, and I know she is like the number 7 of 9 Voyager fan. He says, I would take a Pike show over 7. I don't want my girl in the anarchist rebel manner they want. And I couldn't agree with you more. I hate where 7 is in this show. I just hate. It's like everything that happened in Voyager is totally meaningless. And I've said that's like my least favorite classic Trek, but it's not like I despise it and hate it and think it's okay to treat it like this, because they're using 7. If they didn't like Voyager, why are they using 7 then? You know what I mean? Like why use her?
I find myself wanting to go back and actually rewatch Voyager. That might be my palate cleanser actually for this whole experience of Picard.
My favorites on Voyager are 7, Tuvok, and actually Kes. Because Kes had some good episodes. I thought she had some really good, solid episodes, and those are the ones I really like. And of course, Tuvok. I always point out Tuvok and 7. I think are very, very similar, very, very similar personalities, and they get along well.
And
Um,
Voyager is one of the few places where they give us a continuation of that Wrath of Khan, Red Tunic era Trek, because we do get that one episode that has Rand in it, and it's like Tuvok's backstory, and he actually served on board the Excelsior with Sulu.
yeah, I
That's
know
a
the
fun
episode you're talking about.
episode. That's a fun episode.
I have some issues with that episode because I don't like the fact that it's just like a flashback and it's just all happening in his mind. Um, I really wish they had something where they actually had like a real interaction of the crews. That's just me. It's kind of like my same gripe with um, Generations. It's like I would like to have seen both crews interact with each other. I thought the way they did it was kind of like, I don't know, a little
Right.
half-assed in my opinion. So because even Nimoy said that. Nimoy said they wanted me to do a cameo, and DeForest Kelly said that they want me to do cameos. We don't do cameos. Nope, that's not happening. Says that's disrespectful to the character. That's what they said. We've been doing these characters for a long time. We ain't just going to go on for some cameo. But as far as the Pike thing, Katie also says Pike is like a male Janeway. Be bold, be brave, be courageous. Starfleet is a promise. I give my life for you. You give my life for me. No one gets left behind.
Yeah.
And again, I know there is a lot of people that are itching for this Pike show, and there are rumors that it's going to happen. I think Anson Mount is down. I think Ethan Peck is down. Katie likes Ethan Peck as Spock. She said Ethan Peck is a great Spock. So I think that I know the fans are there that want it. There's a lot of people that even if they don't like disco very much, they like Pike. They want more Pike, So we'll see. It's possible.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm totally down for it. I've been lobbying for it on the show here for a long time. I'm surprised I've had to lobby for it so much. To be honest, it's what they should do. And that one of those other episodes of those three I gave you that's really good is The Sound of Thunder. That's a really, really fun episode. And that gets into oh darn, what's this? The characters. It's Doug Jones' character on Disco. We actually go back to his character's home planet, and that episode is really good. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I came into Picard thinking Picard would be that more classic Trek show. You know what I mean? Whereas Disco's a departure, and based off the things that Patrick Stewart had said when he said that Picard was going to come back, I had a feeling it was going to be a more return to that Trek vision and those ideals. And it's like, so far those ideals are just voiced by Picard. They're things that he expresses, which is nice.
With no competence and completely ineffectively, and again, he's like a dithering old fool. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Raffi called him a fool in one of the episodes. She actually called him a fool. Of course, now she loves him. Such a tender moment when she said that she loves Picard, but earlier episode she literally called him a fool. She called him a fool. So
yeah, and for me, going back to Pike, I mean, Pike is, kind of says the same things, but the difference being that Pike actually backs it up with action because he's a captain. You know what I mean? He's in command of a ship. So he's in the position to make those decisions. He determines the tone. He determines the course of action. And that's it just, I tell you, man, I'm such a huge Pike fan. That's why I want to go back. I want to reread those early Voyages comic books. Like, I really liked Bruce Greenwood as Pike actually in the J.J. Abrams movies. Like, and I'm like going, man, I didn't realize Pike was so interesting. Like, now I'm like, I'm a huge fan of what they did. So
the good thing about Pike is that you don't know much about him, but he's still like an important character in Trek. That's why he's kind of an obvious choice, you would think. because you can kind of, you can kind of just you can kind of, paint your own canvas with that character, because even though he's an established character, there's very little actually established about the character. So,
Right.
you kind of have the best of both worlds. So you immediately have some buy-in by the fans because they're familiar with the character, and then you can kind of do what you want, and that's kind of the real appeal. Why they haven't exploited that more? Why do they do anything they do at this point? I don't know. I can't find the motivations of a crazy person. You know what I mean? I cannot.
Right.
It's impossible to determine the motivations of someone that is, by definition, insane. So, and that's how I feel the writers and producers of Picard are. It's like there's so much literal insanity in this show. It's so bipolar. We talked about that before. It's just all over the place, with such dark themes and so much suicide and all that kind of stuff, and drug addiction, and it's all played up so badly. You know what I mean? Without any real depth of how to deal with these kind of very serious issues.
Right.
It's just
Right.
it's so like bad TV. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. We did have some love for Tuvok, my man, and some love for Voyager. Voyager is a solid series. Peggy mentions a rumor that it is rumored that they might give Pike over to Seth MacFarlane. That's part of the rumor that Seth MacFarlane was involved with negotiations to actually acquire Star Trek. I don't put a lot of stock in those rumors, just to be honest with you. I think it would be cool, but I think it's a lot of wishful thinking. I don't think CBS is in any way looking at selling Star Trek at this point. That can change because we don't really know. We do not know the real numbers for Picard. They keep telling us it's a hit, but they will not tell us their numbers. It's a self-proclaimed hit, and they will not tell us their numbers. And we'll probably never know. The only way we're going, and the other thing is, unfortunately, like for instance, I would go by like the quarterly earnings reports, but with everything going on with Corona, you can chalk it up to that, right? So it's like, who knows what they're going to say and how they're going to spend that, because everybody's losing money right now. So,
well, I personally,
I
I love what Seth MacFarlane and his group is doing with the Orville. I don't feel like they need to honestly even touch Pike. They've established their own unique universe. They've got the values of Trek. They've got their own unique characters. Like, it's just what they've done with the Orville is so amazing. I mean, I could see where if there was a play to purchase, Star Trek as a property or a franchise, or whatever. Okay, I could see handing it to him because clearly his group understands what to do with Trek based off what we've seen with the Orville. I mean, the Orville right now is the best current Star Trek, kind of show actually happening. But I do believe that there is a tremendous amount of potential with a Pike show, and I feel like that what they've established with that chemistry between those characters, the chemistry between Ethan Peck as Spock and Rebecca Romaine as number one, and Anson Mount as Pike, it works, it clicks, it could totally work. And the fact that they're either unsure what to do or they're unsure how to move forward with it, I think is unfortunate, because I think that's the through line. I mean, that literally could be their Mandalorian right there. And the other thing I like about Pike too is Pike has the potential in some ways to be a little bit more Kirk. We haven't had a captain like that in a little while. And I just think that could be really great. I really think that could be great. I really do. I really do. So we should probably move on.
Well, we do have some comments here. You know what I mean? So it's the people are still discussing things, and I like to get into the comments. hear what other people have to say. So it's like, Ayuko says, I wish one day we'd have an alien lead captain. I think that would be interesting. I actually kind of thought they were going to do that in Disco at one point, but that didn't happen. Instead, they actually brought in Pike at that point. So,
but they it's still possible with season 3, depending upon what damage has been done. It's still possible that Saru could be the captain for Disco season 3. He is the most logical choice. And again, I go back to that episode, Sound of Thunder. And there's potential. There's great potential with Saru. That is the other kind of, in my mind anyway, that's the other breakout character from Disco. Saru is a great character, and Doug Jones does a wonderful job. So, again, that's just my opinion. I know some people hate Disco, but I really like that second season.
Katie, I saw the scene that she's talking about. There's a clip that they released. I can't remember which platform of a preview of the next episode of Picard, and it's so tough to watch. And it says a spoiler. Said in a new clip for the finale, Seven tells Elnor that she'd pick up a phaser and call it an end to her life. And she's like, my heart. It's like the way they deal with suicide and suicidal thoughts. The way they deal with suicide and suicidal thoughts in Picard is so condescending, and it's so cavalier. It's almost like a badge of courage that they're so suicidal and damaged, and everybody wants to commit suicide. And let's just talk more about suicide, because that apparently that word is just fine to talk about in the most casual way possible, because it's not like anybody has ever been affected by this or anything like that, or felt this way or anything. Let's just be as cavalier about it as possible. I hate it. Just like I hated the way they treated drug addiction and Raffi's relapse. I thought they made it into a joke. It's like, yeah, I don't understand I don't understand where they're coming from, and I'm offended by it. I dealt with suicidal people. That was my bread and butter. I was on the crisis intervention team at work. I dealt with suicidal people all the time. So it's sickening to me. It's sickening to me that they have that cavalier attitude towards it, and take characters that we like and make them so damaged and dysfunctional and crazy and all that kind of stuff. And that's supposed to be a good thing. It's like, Frake said she's evolved. Yeah, I know. She's de-evolved. She has not evolved. In fact, we have no evolved humans in this show, which was one of the cornerstones of Gene's vision, was that human beings in the future would be evolved. So yeah, that stuff, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. I really don't. I don't get it at all.
And Ayuko has to go because we know that she's in the DC time zone. It's been fun, guys and ladies, but it's midnight over here. See you next time, and please keep coming back. We love your comments. We love the chat. It is kind of funny that it's kind of a ladies' night tonight in the chat, which is kind of cool. And so we do appreciate your comments. We appreciate you coming here, supporting the show, chiming in, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we just appreciate you being here and appreciate you commenting and joining the show.
Yes, thank you. It's a lot of fun. Do you have any more comments you want to highlight, or do we think we're good?
Well, Katie brings up, Seven saying that basically says Janeway, Chakotay, and the Voyager crew meant nothing to her after all, and that's kind of what they're doing. They're saying that the events of Voyager, it's really weird. That's why I say it's like mental illness. It's like they have this thing where it's like, okay, Seven's popular, so we're going to put Seven in this show. But we didn't like Voyager. That's kind of the thing that you get from Shaban, from his comments. I never really liked Voyager. So I'm just going to throw all that stuff away and just make my own Seven. That's pretty much the vibe that I get. It's all like, well, Seven's popular, but we didn't like that show. Kurtzman doesn't like Star Trek. He's said that many times. He's a Star Wars guy. I said I was going to use this on the show, and I'm going to use it on the show right now. somebody on the thread from hashtag All Star Trek said that basically it seems what they're trying to do is they're trying to do a mashup of Star Wars meets Game of Thrones. And I feel like that is exactly what's going on with Star Trek Picard right now. Is it is a mashup of Star Wars and Game of Thrones.
Or it's like I said, it's bad Star Trek fan fiction written by someone who loves Star Wars.
Bad fan fiction by someone who doesn't like Star Wars.
So, because that's what it feels like.